There's a scent I'll never forget, the smell of white funeral lilies mixed with that bitter, burnt coffee you only find in airport lounges. It clung to me for 3 days. Day 1, I lost my mom. Day 2, I buried her in silence. And day 3, I walked back into my office to find the coldest parting gift imaginable, a cardboard box and a termination letter. Those 3 days were the warning shot before my entire world splintered. It was the call no one wants to get. The doctor's voice was clinical, stripping away the life of the woman who taught me how to stand like a rock when the world tries to wash you away. I walked away from Austin, leaving a $20 million contract on the table just to hold. Her hand in her final hours took she passed away in my arms, quiet and soft. The scent of antiseptic and lilies soaked into the coat I wore for 3 days straight, the bitter aftertaste of a final goodbye. And just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, a second blow landed, sharper and crueler than the first. I walked back into work expecting a shred of empathy. Instead, I found an empty box and a pink slip. The reason? Unexcused absence. They fired me for taking 3 days to bury my mother. In that moment of total numbness, I had no idea that their cold betrayal was actually a fuse. They thought they were just getting rid of an employee. They didn't realize that between the tiny USB drive a terrified intern slipped me, and their own sheer arrogance. They just handed me the keys to burn their empire down. This is a story about how a fall doesn't just hurt. It gives you eyes to see through the lies and a strength you never knew you had. If you've ever been treated like trash at work, hit subscribe so I know I'm not alone. And drop a comment with what you do for a living. Let's see which industry needs a serious reality check on kindness. That hospital call shattered everything. My mom, the strongest woman I've ever known, was terminal. Stage 4. The doctor told me time had basically run out. Without thinking, I booked the first flight out of Austin, standing there in the middle of the chaotic airport terminal. I called Victor Harrington. He's the CEO of Atlas Dynamics, and I was his head of strategy. Victor, I have to go. It's my mom. Her voice just broke. I had to stop to breathe. What I didn't know was that seconds before he picked up, Victor had walked out of a brutal board meeting. Our biggest client, Pioneer Retail Group, was threatening to walk if we didn't hit our quarterly numbers. To make it worse, Ryan Cooper, Victor's brother-in-law, was in his ear, pushing him to be ruthless. Her leaving now is a liability, Ryan hissed, his eyes like ice. Victor's response was hollow. Fine, but make it quick. No confirmation email. No handoff instructions. Just a frantic call cut short by the roar of jet engines. I boarded that plane with a knot of pure dread in my stomach. When I got to the hospital, Mom was still lucid. She squeezed my hand, her eyes weak but full of everything she couldn't say. From under the thin hospital blanket, she pulled out a small silver 4-leaf clover pendant. The chain was worn thin from years of skin contact. "Your grandmother gave this to me the day I got married," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Now it's yours. Believe that you already have all the luck you need right in your heart." As I held it, the metal started cold but quickly soaked up my body heat. It took me back to a summer afternoon by the Colorado River when I was 16, sobbing because I'd failed some school competition. Mom sat next to me and put her hand on my shoulder. "The river never stops moving, Claire," she said, pointing at the boulders standing defiant in the rapids. "But the rocks stand firm. Failure is just a wave. You have to learn how to stand." That was the first time I really understood what grit meant. I held her tight, feeling the last bit of warmth she had left. 2 hours later, her grip loosened. She slipped away, quiet as a shadow, right there in my arms. Before the world collapsed, was inches away from closing a $20 million deal with Pioneer Retail Group. It was the deal that was supposed to save Atlas Dynamics. Everyone was just waiting for me to come back and sign. But in that moment, all I had was a silver pendant against my chest and a silent vow to the woman I'd just lost. I will stand firm, no matter what. 3 days later, I walked back into Atlas Dynamics. The morning sun was flooding through the floor-to-ceiling glass, turning the hallways gold. The place I used to call my second home felt like a foreign country. I booted up my computer. New email popped up at the top of my inbox. Please have your desk cleared by 5 p.m. today. HR will assist with your exit processing. Attached was a termination notice.
That's good.
The words were like needles. Unexcused absence without proper authorization. Failure to hand over responsibilities resulting in gross negligence. Signed, Victor Harrington. I sat there paralyzed. My eyes locked onto a detail that most people would have missed. The email came from the general HR address, but the signature formatting was a dead giveaway. It's a slightly off-center alignment. The period placed too close to the last letterette was a tick only one person in this entire building had: Ryan Cooper. I'd spent years fixing his sloppy drafts in strategy meetings. Those tiny errors were burned into my brain. Ryan, Victor's brother-in-law. The guy didn't just want my job. He was drowning under the weight of the Harrington name. I flashed back to a night 6 months ago. I'd stumbled upon Ryan alone in a dark conference room long after hours. He was hunched over his laptop, replaying an old video and interview with the family patriarch, Old Man Harrington. Ryan's a good kid. The voice in the video said, cold and judgmental. But he doesn't have the business blood. We gave him a desk because Victor asked, not because he earned it. Ryan had snapped the laptop shut and buried his face in his hands. He didn't cry, but his shoulders were shaking. That was the first time I saw him as a human being instead of just a corporate shark. Looking back now, I get it. Every time Ryan tried to prove himself by sabotaging me, by faking files, by every desperate move he made, he was just trying to outrun that one sentence. But understanding him didn't mean I forgave him. Pain doesn't give you a free pass to wreck someone else's life. Pushing me out of Atlas was his only shot at proving he was man enough for the family. I didn't need any more proof. I knew exactly whose hand had shoved me off the cliff. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of the email. Force of habit, but this time I didn't send it to my work account. I saved it to a hidden cloud folder and shot a quick text to Jason. Keep your head down and stay in touch. I might need you guys sooner than you think. My gut told me this wasn't the end, was just the opening act. 5 years of my life. Every contract I'd secured, every campaign I'd steered through the storm, it was all reduced to a few lines of cold, soulless accusations. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a fit. I just reached up and touched the clover pendant around my neck. The silver felt like ice against my skin, a coldness deeper than the air conditioning in the room. Deep inside, a vow started to take shape. I will rise. I just didn't realize the real storm was still miles away. I didn't slam my fist on the desk or storm into Victor's office demanding answers. Instead, I took one last photo of that termination letter and forwarded it to my personal email. I shut down the computer, stood up, and started packing item, slow and steady. Like I was carefully folding up 5 years of my life. By the time my colleagues started trickling in, my desk was almost bare. Tanya from accounting was the first to see. She froze in the hallway, her eyes widening at the cardboard box sitting on my chair. Claire, ... What's going on? She asked, her voice dropping. I'm out, I said shortly. What? I guess ... Taking 3 days to bury my mom wasn't a strategic priority. Tanya's face went from confused to pure rage in a split second. Have you talked to Donald? The board needs to hear about this. I just shook my head, carefully wrapping a group photo in brown paper. No, I'm not fighting this, but I'm not forgetting it either. Tanya gripped her files so hard her knuckles turned white. And I saw it in her eyes, a silent promise. I heard heavy footsteps behind me. Jason, my lead project manager, the guy who could find a silver lining in a hurricane, didn't even try to smile. He was gripping his coffee mug like he wanted to crush it. "This is absolute garbage," he muttered. I gave him a small nod to stop him before he got himself fired too. "It's over, Jason." Victor made the call. "But we just closed the Aurora Logistics merger last month." Jason exploded, his voice shaking with frustration. "This quarter's growth is 100% your strategy." I could only manage a sad, tired smile, I guess. It still wasn't enough. Effin, the logistics expert and the quietest guy on the team, stood behind Jason. He didn't say a word, but his fists were white and his jaw was set so tight, I thought he might punch through the glass wall. Then there was Veronica, our CRM lead. Usually, she's the most organized, composed person in the room. But right then, tears were just streaming down her face. "Do you remember?" Shay asked, her voice cracking. 3 years ago when my dad had the stroke. I begged Victor for emergency leave. He said no. He made me choose between my career and my father." She wiped her eyes, shaking. "I chose wrong. He died alone. I won't watch another person get crushed like that." A strange, sharp resolve flickered in her eyes. She glanced toward the hallway and leaned in, whispering, "I'm going to do something. Don't ask what, but if you need me, ... I'm there." The way she looked at MIT wasn't just sadness. It was the raw fear of an uncertain future. Louise, the youngest of us, gripped her backpack straps, her eyes burning. "You deserve so much. Better than this?" she hissed. The air in the room felt heavy, like we'd all just witnessed something much bigger than a firing. Nobody needed to say it. We just knew. Whatever happened next, ... It wasn't going to end here. "You can't just walk away," Veronica said, her eyes bloodshot. "The Phoenix Group renewal is next week. The Horizon shipping deal is still on the table. Nobody knows the system like you do." I taped the last box shut, the zip screech of the packing. Tape echoed in the silence. "Victor should have thought about that," I whispered, "before he fired me for saying goodbye to my mother." My words landed like a lead weight in everyone's chest. It had only been a week since my mom passed. The dirt on her grave was still fresh. And here I was, facing a cold-blooded betrayal from the place I'd given everything to. Suddenly, a voice. Like a serrated blade, cut through the tension. "Everyone back to your desks. Now." Victor Harrington stood there, arms crossed, his face a mask of rigid tension. "We have deadlines to hit," he barked, as if spreadsheets could bury human loss. Nobody moved. He raised his voice, the tone ready to snap like a guitar string. "I said now." After a long, suffocating silence, my team started to drift away. But they didn't just walk. They gave me these looks-lingering promises. Jason walked past me, squeezing his hand into a fist. Ethan just gripped his jaw and marched off. Veronica stayed back until the very last second as I leaned down to grab my box. She slipped something small into my Palma Silver USB drive. "I backed up all your strategic analytics," she breathed, her eyes darting around full of nerves. I froze. "How? Why would you?" Veronica looked down, her voice trembling. 2 weeks ago, right after you called in the emergency, I overheard Ryan on the phone with Victor. He said this is our chance to get rid of her. I couldn't believe it." She tightened her grip. 3 years ago, when Victor denied me that. Leave for my dad, ... I stayed. Okay? And my father died alone in a hospital bed. I'm not letting you go through the same thing. I squeezed her shaking hand. "Veronica, ... I've been doing this after hours for 3 nights, she whispered, a new kind of steel in her voice. File by file, I cleared the access logs. It quiet. If Victor finds out I'm dead, but I couldn't. I couldn't stay silent twice. The USB felt warm in my palma, tiny spark of light in the middle of the blizzard swallowing my chest. Victor stepped closer, his voice low but with a hint of something guilt. Anxiety. Claire, you know the pressure from Pioneer. Ryan said we couldn't afford any delays. I looked him dead in the eye. My voice was pure ice, even if it meant burying my mother. For a split second, I saw him flinch. His jaw twitched. But then, like he was trying to break every human emotion left inside him, he snapped the mask back on. Business needs change fast. Atlas Dynamics needs people who can adapt. Your loss is ... unfortunate, but don't. I cut him off. Was a razor. Don't you dare finish that sentence, Victor. He looked rattled for a heartbeat, turned away quickly, adjusting his tie, his voice going flat like he was reading a memo. HR is waiting. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I picked up my box, never breaking eye contact. Don't worry, I said, my voice soft as a breeze. I'm not going to make a scene. I paused, letting the final words drop like an anchor. But remember this moment, Victor? You're going to need it later. I walked away without looking back. Somewhere deep in my chest, a silent vow was being carved into stone. The HR office was cold, like a dentist's waiting room. White walls, minimalist desks, zero warmth. Barbara Lewis, she'd only been at Atlas for 6 months, sat across from me, looking incredibly uncomfortable. I am so sorry about this, Claire, she said softly, sliding a severance packet across the desk and ... I'm truly sorry about your mother. Thanks, I said, my eyes skimming the cold printed lines. A standard severance package with 2 weeks' pay, a non-disparagement clause, and a reminder about my non-compete, the one that would block me from working for any rival for the next 6 months. Claire? Barbara hesitated, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the edge of the desk. This feels incredibly sudden. Is there something I should know? I looked up, debating for a heartbeat. Then, done with hiding, I pulled out my phone and showed her the photo of the termination email, the one that hung me out to dry for 3 days of bereavement leave. Barbara stared at the screen. Her corporate mask cracked, her eyes widening in disbelief. This is the entire termination notice. Just one email. No performance improvement plan. No prior warnings. Nothing ... at all. Barbara gripped her pen, her face tight as she scribbled. A few rapid notes on the pad beside her. I need to double-check this with legal, she said. Please wait here. As the door clicked shut behind her, I turned toward the glass. From the 17th floor, the Colorado River looked like a small ribbon cutting through downtown Austin. The reddish-brown water rolled on, quiet and persistent, like the lessons my mom taught me when I was a kid. She used to say, the river always moves, Claire. But the rocks, they stay. They stand firm against every wave. She also reminded me a rock stands firm because it doesn't fight the river. It learns how to exist with it. I wasn't going to fight Atlas, but I was going to find a way for the truth to win. 20 minutes later, Barbara came back. Her face was carefully remasked with a polite smile, but I didn't need to hear a word. I could read the answer in her eyes. Nothing can be changed, Claire, she said, her voice flat. Texas is an employment at-will state. The company has the right to fire anyone ... for any reason. I nodded, preparing my pen to sign. But just before the ink hit the paper, Barbara lowered her voice, her eyes darting toward the empty hallway. Off the record ... double quotes, she whispered, so low I had to lean in to hear. I checked with a former colleague in legal. Looks like Ryan Cooper edited your handoff files before you left, making it look like you abandoned your post. I froze for a split second, my fingers tightening around the pen. I looked Barbara straight in the eye, my voice just as low. Can you save any email or document that proves Ryan edited them? I'm not suing, but I want the truth on the record. Barbara nodded, her gaze turning steady. I'll try. A mix of gratitude and bitterness washed over me. Thanks, I replied, then signed the papers in front of me. No argument, no looking back. Because I knew that what truly mattered could never be erased by a line in a contract. Atlas Dynamics can do whatever they want, I said as I signed the final sheet, and so can I. Barbara hesitated again. Then once more she dropped her voice, as if breaking an invisible rule. Off the record. This isn't right. She paused, weighing her words. If you wanted to sue, I don't. I cut her off, my voice decisive. Truly, thank you. I gathered the cardboard box in my arms and walked slowly through the main hallway. My colleagues' eyes followed me, heavy and full of meaning. My team stood there like statues, silent, but every look conveyed something. I stared something. I felt in my bones. I gave them a small smile, my final gift, as their leader and walked out. Outside, the September sun was hitting Austin in a strange way, both blinding and warm. I set the box in my trunk and sat behind the wheel, letting the final shards of emotion wash over me in the total silence. My fingers found the clover pendant at my neck, feeling the warmth of the faded silver. Stand firm. And the opportunity will come. My mother's voice echoed in my memory. You were right, Mom, I whispered back. My phone started buzzing incessantly. One text, then another, and another. Jason, this is so wrong. Veronica, are you okay? Can we meet up? Ethan, Victor is a coward. The whole team is fuming. The messages flooded in full of rage, support, and loyalty. Those people weren't just colleagues. They were my professional family. I started the engine and in the low hum. My head began to clear. I wasn't going to sue Atlas, but as I drove home through the sunset, the question echoing in my mind wasn't what will I do next, but rather, is there anything left for me to do? A week passed like a long, slow nightmare. On the first day, I sat at my computer opening dozens of job boards. But every time I went to submit my resume, my fingers froze on the keys. They'd call Atlas for a reference. And what would Atlas say about me? I reached out to my old network people who'd spent years telling me, call me if you ever need anything. 2 didn't even bother to reply. The third one finally called back, sounding like he was talking through a mouthful of marbles. Claire, look, I heard rumors about the Atlas situation. It's just ... not a great time. Sorry, rumors travel faster than the truth. And in this industry, your reputation is your oxygen. The next few days were a blur. The pendant around my neck started to feel heavy, not like a lucky charm anymore, but like a physical weight of everything I'd lost. Jason called, sounding worried sick. Claire, you okay? We haven't heard a peep. I tried to play it cool, but my voice was a mess. I'm fine, Jason. Just ... getting my ducks in a row. The second I hung up, I slid down to the floor and, for the first time since the funeral, I just lost it. I wasn't crying about the job, was crying because I felt completely ... invisible. My fridge was empty. I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually eaten a meal. I shut the door, the hunger gone. Day and night just bled into each other until the edges got fuzzy. One afternoon, I drove out to the cemetery and sat by Mom's grave. I don't know what to do, Mom, I whispered. You told me to stand firm, but everyone thinks I'm a quitter. Now, they think I'm a liability. If I stand firm, I'm just standing here alone. A breeze caught the white lilies I brought, shaking them gently. No answer, just the wind. By Saturday morning, I woke up after a night of 0 sleep. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the pale, hollowed-out woman looking back at me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. And right then, not my absolute breaking point, my phone lit up. The name on the screen, Logan Miller, CEO of Novolink Solutions. It's my biggest rival at Atlas, and the guy who'd been trying to headhunt me for over a year. I touched the silver pendant again, feeling that faint, metallic warmth. Mom said the opportunity comes to those who stand firm. Maybe this is it. I took a breath and picked up. Claire, Logan said. His voice was deep, steady, and left zero room for doubt. I hear Atlas is putting everything they've got into that $300 million national logistics bid. I stayed quiet, my heart hammering against my ribs. What they don't know, he continued, is that Novalink has been prepping for this for 2 years. With you on board, we don't just win, we rewrite the entire industry. A long, heavy silence stretched across the line. I looked out the car window at the morning sun hitting the streets. It was time. The Novalink office was the polar opposite. Of Atlas Dynamics, no cold, sterile walls. No suffocating cloud of fear hanging over everyone's heads. Instead, the place was flooded with natural light, filled with a hum of people actually talking and laughing. The second I stepped into the lobby, I felt it. There was a small sign by the door, handwritten, "We take care of your family the way you take care of business." I noticed a board in the corner listing weekly mentorship sessions. "We have a program for our junior staff," Logan explained, noticing my gaze. "Every new hire is paired with a senior leader. We believe in building people, not just chasing margins." Logan Miller, a powerhouse of a man with salt and pepper hair and sharp, intelligent eyes, met me with a handshake that could have crushed stone, but it was warm. "Claire, I've been waiting for this call for a long time." He smiled, leading me into a private conference room, though I'll be honest, ... I didn't expect to see you under these circumstances. News travels fast in this world. He'd heard I left Atlas, even if he didn't have the gory details yet. I gave it to him straight. No sugarcoating, no hiding the ugly parts. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo of the termination email. Logan scanned the screen in. Silence. It felt like an eternity. Finally, he set the phone down and locked his eyes onto mine. "Claire, I'm sorry about all of this. I truly am." He paused, his gaze intensifying. "But before we talk about a title or a desk, need to ask you some hard questions." I nodded, bracing myself. I was ready. "In our line of work, rumors travel fast," Logan said bluntly. "I've heard people saying you left Atlas because of performance issues. They're saying you failed to deliver on the Pioneer deal." He locked his eyes on mine. "I need to hear your side of this." I took a deep breath, fighting to stay composed. The Pioneer contract was 90% negotiated by me. All it needed was a final signature. I took 3 days off to bury my mother. In that time, Ryan Cooper edited the terms without telling me. Pioneer caught it and froze the deal. Atlas made me the scapegoat. "Do you have proof?" I pulled out my phone and opened the email containing both the original contract and the sabotaged version. "This is the draft I wrote. This is the version Ryan sent to Pioneer. Check clauses 7 and 12. They're different." Logan scrutinized the files, comparing them. "The timestamps are different," he noted, then looked up. "But how do I know you didn't just fabricate these after the fact?" The question cut deep, a direct hit to my integrity, but I got it. Logan had a company to protect. "I can't prove it right this second," I admitted. "But I can give you the direct line for the lead at Pioneer. They can verify exactly which version they received and exactly who sent it." Logan nodded, taking notes. "Second question, if I hire you, what's my risk? Is your non-compete with Atlas actually enforceable?" "I've consulted with counsel. They said it's a stretch." "A stretch isn't impossible," Logan reminded me. "Novalink can't afford to get dragged into a marathon. Lawsuit with Atlas, understand. But if Atlas sues, their own illegal termination tactics get dragged into the light. They won't want that." Logan tapped his fingers on the table, calculating. "Final question, and this is the big one. Why should I hire you? Not out of pity. Not because you were treated unfairly. But because of the value you bring to Novalink, this was the moment." I squared my shoulders and looked him dead in the eye. "In 5 years at Atlas, I grew my department's revenue by 340%. I closed 14 major deals worth $180 million. I built a loyal, high-performing team. A team Atlas is currently paying the price for losing. I paused. But more importantly, you've headhunted me multiple times over the last year. You saw something in me worth pursuing then. I'm still that person. Only now I'm free to say yes. Logan went silent, his gaze searching mine. 1 minute passed. 2. Finally, he let out a breath. I need 48 hours to verify a few things. If everything checks out, as you say, we'll talk contract details. He stood up, extending his hand. But Claire, if I find one single thing that doesn't add up, ... This deal is dead on arrival. I shook his hand, firm and steady. Understood. And thank you for the opportunity. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. I reached up, my fingers brushing the silver pendant at my neck. The cold metal finally felt like it was warming up against my skin. I knew a real door was finally opening. This is inhumane, Logan continued, his voice still thick with indignation. Bereavement leave exists for a reason. I tightened my lips. Atlas Dynamics always put margins over people, I replied. I never thought I'd become a victim of the very philosophy I helped build. Logan leaned forward, his eyes turning. Sharp and focused. I'll be straight with you, Claire. Novalink Solutions is expanding into the southern market, and we need someone like you. He paused, a half-smirk playing on his face. Director of Market Development. If you want it, it's yours. My heart hammered against my ribs. Director of Development. This was a massive step up from my old role at Atlas. More power, more responsibility, and a much bigger seat at the table. But the compete, ... I hesitated, voicing the one thing that could kill this dream. Logan just gave a confident, dismissive smile. Our legal team already tore that clause apart. It's too broad to be legally enforceable. If Atlas wants to make trouble, Novalink will stand right behind you. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice as level as possible. Let me think about it. Of course, Logan nodded, completely understanding. Take the weekend. Let's talk details on Monday. That night, I met Jason and Veronica at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar tucked away in East Riverside, far enough that we wouldn't run into anyone from Atlas. They were already tucked into a corner booth, their faces a messy cocktail of rage and worry the second I walked in. You okay? Veronica asked immediately. She pulled out a chair for me, her eyes scanning my face for any sign of a breakdown. I'm hanging in there, I said, forcing a small smile. It's going to be a rough few weeks, but I'm standing firm. Jason let out a bitter laugh. Victor is a total moron. The office is a circus right now. No one can find your Horizon Analytics, and Phoenix Group is absolutely losing their minds. I took a sip of water, trying to keep my face neutral. Sounds like ... That's Victor's problem now. Veronica leaned in, her voice dropping to a serious whisper. It's not just our team, Claire. The whole company is buzzing about how they screwed you over. People are pissed. I blinked, caught off guard by that. Jason nodded in confirmation. You're respected, Claire, not just by us. What Victor did ... It scared people. If they can, do that to someone like you, Veronica whispered, her voice trembling with realization. Then what hope is there for the rest of us? I squeezed my glass, feeling the weight of it all. Donald is starting to ask questions, Veronica added. Chairman of the board has definitely caught wind of the situation. Good, I said simply, as we talked. My phone kept lighting up with texts from other team members' horror stories of the chaos. The mounting resentment and the sheer helplessness spreading through the office. Atlas Dynamics was finally feeling the vacuum I'd left behind. Jason looked up, his eyes direct. So, what's the move? What are you doing next? I paused for a beat, weighing the moment. Link just made me an offer, I said quietly. Both of their eyes went wide. But what about the non-compete? Veronica asked, her hands tightening around her glass. It's flimsy, I explained, especially since Atlas terminated me without cause. It's hard to enforce a no-work clause when they're the ones who kicked me out the door. Jason pulled out his phone, scowling at a new notification. Victor called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning, Saturday, he reported. That's a first. I managed a faint smile, looking out into the distance. Some things, no matter how hard you try to bury them, always claw their way into the light. All my analysis files were still on the Atlas servers. But my filing system and encryption logic only I understood had turned the place into a labyrinth with no exit. I hadn't done it on purpose, but I couldn't deny the tiny spark of satisfaction. I stood up and grabbed my bag. Gotta head out, big meeting tomorrow morning. Jason watched me closely, his gaze steady. If and this is just a what if, you actually take that Novalink gig, he hesitated. Are they hiring? I froze for a second, looking from Jason to Veronica. Hypothetically, I smiled. They're expanding very fast. Their eyes met tanned without a single word. I understood everything. They weren't saying, Saturday morning I met with Vincent Reyes, a labor attorney a friend had recommended. His office was small but sharp Yale and Stanford degrees framed on the wall. I told him the whole story from the termination email to the suffocating non-compete, and handed him my phone to read the emails himself. He took off his glasses, leaning back with a thoughtful frown. This is a textbook case of bad faith termination, Vincent noted. Firing an employee for taking bereavement leave, it violates the implied covenant of good faith. I don't want to sue, I said firmly. I just want to know if they can actually stop me from going to Novalink. Vincent picked up the contract, scanning the fine print. This clause is way too broad, he said, pointing to a line. Prohibiting work for a competitor within a 300-mile radius. It's basically telling you to leave the entire industry. Can they enforce it? I asked. Vincent gave a dry, seasoned laugh. In Texas, under these circumstances, good luck to them. Courts don't side with companies that act like monsters. He set the file down and looked at me. Claire, what's your plan? Offered me a spot. I said, better title, better pay. Vincent nodded, his expression relaxing. Atlas would have to prove you're causing irreparable harm by joining a rival, given how they treated you. That's a mountain they can't climb. He scribbled a note and looked up. My advice? Keep moving. Don't let a trash contract stop you from living your life. All through the rest of the weekend, my phone never stopped vibrating. My old team was live reporting the meltdown. Victor's Saturday meeting had been a disaster. He was dumping more work on everyone without extra pay or support. They'd found the Phoenix Group files, but no one could make sense of my complex models. The workflow was grinding to a halt. Clients were getting irritable. And Atlas was starting to look like a ship taking on water in the middle of a hurricane. DGIK La PND CHV BNA Hoa Nui Dung Sang Ting and Ah. And Tiptisu. Unsish Triune. VI Fong. CCHK. CH Tion. H. Engen Eng GGI Thong Chuan Mi Wai Ha V TIU CMXC. RE Theouc UCAB. N. By Sunday night, watching the Austin skyline fade into a blur of neon through my window, I'd made my choice. And this time, there was no looking back. First thing Monday morning, I called Logan Miller. I'm in, I said, my voice steady. But I have one condition. Logan let out a low, easy laugh. Shoot. I build my own team. If my old crew from Atlas Dynamics applies, they get a fair shot. No politics, just talent. Done, Logan replied without a heartbeat of hesitation. They're even half as good as you. We're the lucky ones. That afternoon, I officially signed with Novalink Solutions as the Director of Market Development for the Southern region. The pay was 40% higher than Atlas. The benefits were top tier, and the signing bonus was life-changing. As I stepped out of the Novalink building into the blistering Austin sun, I checked my phone. 7 new messages. Every single one was from a core member of my old team. Tuesday morning, I picked a hole-in-the-wall coffee shop in downtown Austin, a quiet corner where we wouldn't be spotted. Jason arrived first, then Veronica. Then Ethan, Louise, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla one by one, until we had 2 tables, pushed together, buzzing with whispers. Atlas is a dumpster fire, Ethan said, skipping the small talk. Victor is micromanaging every breath we take, and the chairman is breathing down his neck. The clients. They're starting to scream. Phoenix Group is threatening to pull their contract, Veronica added, her voice tight with stress. They're asking point blank why you're not the one handling the renewal. I took a slow sip of my coffee, just listening to the pieces fall apart. Atlas was hemorrhaging. Jason leaned back, staring off into the distance. You know, there was a minute there where I thought about just quitting the industry altogether. He gave a dry, hollow laugh. But then I remembered the day you pulled me into that conference room and showed me that my work actually mattered. That it wasn't just numbers. I squeezed my cup, a lump forming in my throat. Veronica looked down at the table, her voice small but certain. My real dream was never Atlas. I want to be a consultant, someone who builds decent companies. She looked up, her eyes suddenly bright, and I think Novalink might be the place to start. Ethan, the man of few words, finally spoke up. I stayed at Atlas because I thought I didn't have a choice. You showed me that a better world actually exists. Louise, her eyes burning with that familiar fire, chimed in. I grew up in a family where people were always looked down on. Who gave me the belief that I could be more. Ethan didn't say anything else. He just tightened his hand on the tabula. Silent, powerful vow. I looked at each of them, the faces of people who had bled for me, fought for me, people who deserved so much more than a corporate cage. You all have stable jobs at Atlas, I reminded them gently. This isn't an easy jump to make. Louise gripped her coffee cup, her voice thick. Stable? You call that place safe after what they did to you? After they fired you for burying your mom. I took a deep breath. I knew then that we'd crossed the Rubicon. There was no going back. If they can cut you loose for grieving, Louise continued, her voice turning sharp as a razor, then none of us are safe. Not ever. I nodded slowly. Novalink is hiring, I said, choosing my words carefully. I can't make any promises, but I can get your names to the top of the pile. We already applied. Veronica smiled, pulling a stack of printed confirmation emails from her bag for applications. All time-stamped. Yesterday, I froze, completely stunned. You guys applied before even talking to me? Jason shrugged, his gaze unwavering. Where you go, we follow. Period. A wave of emotion hit me, pure gratitude, mixed with the realization that I'd led these people well. I cleared my throat, my voice dropping an octave. Let me make some calls. Right then, my phone buzzed. A message from a friend in the logistics world. Bad news travels like wildfire. Pioneer Retail Group. The giant account I'd personally spent months landing had just flagged irregularities in the contract terms. I frowned, scrolling through the next text. Jason leaned over my shoulder, letting out a long, bitter breath. Ryan used the chaos after you left, he whispered. He messed with the draft, sent it straight to legal, and lied through his teeth, saying it was the version you approved. I gripped the phone, my knuckles turning white. But as I reached the end of the message, I froze. Pioneer didn't just catch the fraud through a routine check. They found a hidden metadata note inside the very USB drive Veronica had slipped me years ago. I developed a habit of embedding detailed technical annotations, including specific clauses to protect client interests, into my master files. Ryan was so desperate to fix the deal that he never even noticed them. Those hidden notes acted like a digital forensic trail, exposing exactly how he'd warped the contract to inflate Atlas's margins. Pioneer didn't just walk away. They nuked the deal, filed a formal complaint with the National Logistics Association, and blacklisted Atlas Dynamics. A $20 million contract, months of my life evaporated in a heartbeat. I closed my eyes and felt a strange, chilling peace. I didn't have to lift a finger for revenge. Atlas was digging its own grave one, shovel full of greed and incompetence. At a time, Monday morning, 7:30 a.m., my phone vibrated across the nightstand. The caller ID, Donald Myers, chairman of the board at Atlas Dynamics. I picked up, keeping my voice clinical. "Good morning, Donald." "We need to talk, Claire," he said, his voice taut, like he was holding back a landslide. "About what?" "I just received 4 resignation letters, all from your old team. And here's the kicker, they're effective immediately." He paused, the silence heavy. "Care to explain this to me?" I took a slow, deep breath. "I don't work for Atlas anymore, Donald. Those are grown adults making their own career moves. All 4 are joining Novalink, right? Or you're the new director of development." Donald's composure was officially cracking. I could hear the pressure of a sinking ship in his tone. "People choose their paths for a reason," I replied, softly. "Maybe you should ask Victor why his best people are jumping ship all at once." A long, agonizing silence stretched across the line. This is about your termination, isn't it?" Donald's voice sounded ancient, exhausted. "Ask Victor," I said coldly. "I did." Donald sighed. And then I audited the files. Another pause. "Claire, I just received a letter from Victor. He wrote that firing you was the single biggest mistake of his career." I sat up, caught off guard. I hadn't expected a confession. "Victor told me," Donald continued, his voice dropping an octave, "that during that board meeting, directors gave him an ultimatum. Cut costs immediately to hit the quarterly goal or lose his job. Pioneer was threatening to pull out if they didn't see decisive action. Ryan was in his ear, whispering that you were the bottleneck. And Victor, he panicked. He made the most cowardly move a leader can make." "That doesn't justify it," I said, my voice like flint. "I know," Donald said. "Victor knows too. In his letter, he wrote, 'I tried to save the company by sacrificing an innocent person. Now, both the company and my honor are in ruins. Claire deserved better.' I wish I'd been braver." Donald stopped for air. He resigned before the board. "Could even ask Claire? Victor is gone." I bit my lip, a mess of anger and a tiny flickering spark of pity. "But I wouldn't forgive him." "That's between you and Victor," I said, my voice like dry ice. "I only have one question. How does a CEO fire a head of strategy without consulting his chairman?" Donald let out a breath so heavy I could feel the weight of it through the phone. "Victor claimed it was an emergency. Said they couldn't wait for me to fly back from Seattle." Another pause, longer this time. Then Donald added quietly, "The board forced him out officially this morning." I gripped the phone tighter, but I stayed silent. "Those resignations from your team," Donald continued, "were the final straw. We had no other move left." I didn't say a word. Sometimes the silence between sentences says more than any apology ever could. "Listen to me," Claire, Donald said, his voice dropping into a desperate plea. "I'm prepared to offer you your job back. We'll start with a 10% raise and a formal public apology from the company." He paused, his heavy breathing coming through the line. "Pioneer Group and Horizon Shipping are both threatening to walk if you aren't leading their accounts. We've lost 30% of our projected revenue in just 2 weeks." His voice began to tremble slightly. "We need your expertise. Atlas won't survive if you don't re-sign those deals. But once trust is shattered, every offer, no matter how shiny, is just a hollow echo in an empty room." I appreciate the offer, Donald, I said, my voice remaining perfectly level. But I've already accepted a position elsewhere. We'll pay you 1.5 times whatever they're giving you. Donald blurted out, the panic finally breaking through. I didn't leave because of the money, I replied, my gaze fixed on the horizon, steady as a rock. Double quotes, then ... Then what do you need? Donald stammered, completely lost. 7 core people leaving at once is a catastrophe. The institutional knowledge they have, it's irreplaceable. I gripped the phone. If you're asking me, I said slowly, letting every word sink in, the only thing I need is a time machine. I paused to let the silence do the talking. I need to go back to the day my mother died. I need to see Atlas Dynamics treat me like a human being with a soul, experiencing real loss instead of a replaceable profit machine. The other end of the line went dead silent. I have to go, Donald, I finished. Today is my first day at the new office. I don't want to be late. He started to stammer about the non-compete again, trying one last time to use fear as a leash. Your legal team contact my attorney. I cut him off, my voice like a blade. They might want to take a long, hard look at my wrongful termination file first. I hung up. No goodbyes. No looking back at the wreckage. I drove to Novalink Solutions with the morning light flooding the open boulevards of Austin. Logan Miller met me in the lobby with a massive grin. We're reviewing all 7 resumes, he said, sounding genuinely pumped. Their track records are incredible. Interviews start Wednesday. Thank you for giving them a fair shake, I said. It's more than just being fair, Claire. Logan laughed, his eyes bright. Atlas Dynamics threw away a gold mine they didn't even know they had. 2 days later, I got another call, this time from Barbara Lewis in Atlas HR. Her voice was low, hushed, like she was afraid of shadows. I shouldn't be telling you this, Claire, ... double quotes. There was a tense beat. But Victor Harrington has been suspended pending an internal investigation. I went still, clutching the phone. The board is launching a full-scale audit into the bereavement policies and the entire management chain. Barbara continued, her voice dropping even lower. The fact that a whole specialized team walked out at once. It finally rang the alarm. Bells. She stopped for a second, letting out a heavy breath. And ... there's something else. I waited, heart racing. Ryan Cooper was trying to bury a massive financial deficit in the quarterly report. Barbara whispered. When your team left, there was no one left who understood the systems well enough to keep the cover-up going. I leaned my head back against my chair, closing my eyes for a split second to let the news settle. But Barbara wasn't done. I forwarded some internal emails to the board, she said, her voice small but fierce. Emails that prove Ryan and Victor were intentionally hiding the losses. There's no denying it now. The final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, revealing a pathetic, ugly picture. Atlas Dynamics, with all its corporate polish and glass towers, was rotting from the inside out. Fueled by greed and lies, a tiny smile touched my lips. For the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift off my chest. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the fact that the truth, no matter how hard they tried to bury it, had finally clawed its way into the light. And nothing could stop it now. That Friday, all 4 core members of my old team, Jason, Veronica, Ethan, and Louise, officially signed their offers with Novalink. To celebrate our new beginning, we gathered at a small restaurant tucked away on the banks of the Colorado River, under the warm yellow lights reflecting off the water like 1,000 fallen stars. Words felt unnecessary. One look into each other's eyes said it all. We had survived the storm together. Jason was the first to raise his glass, his smile radiant, to new beginnings. Veronica stood up, holding a small, carefully wrapped gift, her eyes shimmering with emotion. And to Claire, she said, placing the package in front of me. The person who taught us what it actually means to be a leader. I carefully unwrapped the paper. Inside was a small painting of the Colorado River, its waters churning around. solid, immovable rocks. I caught my breath as the meaning hit me. Veronica smiled through her tears. You taught us that, ... You don't have to fight with hatred. You just have to stand firm. That's enough. I squeezed the frame, a lump forming in my throat. The warmth of the lights, the sound of the water outside, the familiar faces around the table, it was a moment etched into my soul. I knew this wasn't just a celebration. It was a silent vow for the journey ahead, a journey of resilience, unity, and never losing sight of our core values. The following week, an official letter arrived from Atlas Dynamics. It was an admission of error regarding my termination, accompanied by a financial settlement offer to avoid litigation. The apology also noted that Atlas had overhauled its leave policies, adding protections for employees facing personal loss, a direct result of the investigation led by Paula. I signed the settlement, not for the money, but for something far more valuable, the official recognition that they were wrong. That same day, Phoenix Group officially moved their business to Novalink. They signed the second they heard my entire old team was working under my leadership again. The tide of the industry had shifted. We were the rocks that had changed the river's course, just as my mother had taught me. Excellent work, Claire, Logan Miller said with a proud smile as I finished the quarterly summary. You and your team have blown every expectation out of the water. I smiled, my heart full. They deserve the credit. They're extraordinary. As the meeting broke and I headed back to my office, the core for Jason, Veronica, Ethan, and Louise were waiting with a massive cake. What is all this? I laughed. Exactly 3 months since we jumped ship from Atlas. Jason grinned. We're celebrating our own Independence Day. I let out a laugh aloud, genuine sound I hadn't made in months. You guys are like children, I said, shaking my head, though my eyes were bright with happiness. But I'm so glad you're here. Veronica stepped forward, her conviction plain to see. Seriously, Claire, we're all actually growing here, in a place where people actually matter. And she was right. Every one of them had flourished in their new roles. They had more autonomy, better tools, and most importantly, they were heard. They weren't just cogs in a machine anymore. Novalink wasn't just growing. We were a magnet for partners who had turned their backs on Atlas. Among them was Pioneer Retail Group. They didn't just come back. They signed a deal twice the size and duration of the old one, without a single word being spoken. That contract was the ultimate validation of our choice. But the biggest battle was still ahead, in the final round for the $300 million national logistics bid. Only 2 names remained, Novalink Solutions and Atlas Dynamics. Atlas, the once mighty giant, was now betting its entire existence on this one contract. The pressure had made them reckless. In a final, desperate act, Atlas intentionally leaked a forged document aimed at shredding Novalink's reputation and credibility. But they had no idea. I had seen this play coming from miles away. Everything I needed was buried in the hidden data Veronica had slipped me. Instead of rushing to clear my name with a panicked public statement, I played it cold. I watched from the sidelines as Atlas confidently presented their forged documents to the National Bidding Committee. I waited until the spotlight was at its brightest, until their lies had reached a fever pitch. Only then did I leak the undeniable proof, not with a shout, but with a silent, surgical strike that let the truth explode exactly when it needed to. 2 days after officially signing with Novalink, I brought in my first win, a small but deeply symbolic contract with Horizon Shipping. As I presented the strategy, the CEO, a silver-haired man named Harold, watched me closely. Claire, he said, his voice slow and warm. My son lost his mother last year. I know exactly what you're carrying. His gaze drifted from my face to the contract, then settled on the clover pendant at my neck. And I believe, he said, signing the paper with a decisive stroke, that those who honor their family will honor their partners. As I walked out of that meeting, I gripped the pendant tight. The warmth of the metal felt like an invisible embrace from my mother. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was truly standing on my own 2 feet again. Logan tapped my shoulder, beaming. "Brilliant, Claire. But this is just the beginning." I didn't realize then that this small, warm victory was the final peak. Before the real storm hit, the one that would threaten to drown everything I'd built. That afternoon, I scrolled through my phone. My screen suddenly froze. Ryan Cooper, Victor's brother-in-law, had just posted a photo on LinkedIn. He was sitting comfortably in my office, my old office at Atlas, holding a glass of champagne, a smirk on his face like a slap. The caption turned my blood to ice. "Sometimes you have to let the weak links sink. The river only respects the stones that stand firm." Hashtag new beginnings. Hashtag Atlas strong. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a cold hand. I gripped the phone so hard my palms went slick with sweat, making the metal casing slide in my grip. Right then, the phone rang an unknown number.
"Claire Parker," a voice said, cold and hard as forged steel. "This is James Kovac, CEO of Meridian Freight Group. We just received an email containing very specific details regarding your theft of client data from Atlas." "That is a completely baseless rumor," I shot back instantly. But my voice betrayed me with a slight tremor, failing to hold the wall of calm I was trying to build. "I can explain." 48 hours. Kovac's voice cut me off, each word falling like a hammer blow against the future of Novalink and my own career. "Prove you're innocent. Otherwise, we're canceling the $10 million contract and going public with the reason to the entire industry." I'd barely hung up when Logan walked into my office. He looked like he'd just seen a ghost. "Claire," he sighed, voice heavy with dread, "2 other potential clients just got the same email. I believe in you. But belief isn't legal evidence. If we don't have proof to fight this in 48 hours, I have to suspend you." The room seemed to spin. Atlas wasn't just trying to fire me anymore. They were trying to erase my name, my reputation, and my future from the face of the earth. Suddenly, a text popped up from Barbara. "Tonight, the old cafe. Come alone. And be careful." That night, the cafe was empty. Veronica was waiting for me, arranged by Barbara. She was pale, her hands shaking as she pushed a USB drive across the table. "I backed up everything," she whispered, "including Ryan's system access logs." I didn't sleep for the next 6 hours, but when I plugged the drive in, the screen demanded a password. I tried everything. Project names, Veronica's birthday, even the company name. Nothing worked. Veronica had encrypted it to protect herself, and now that protection was my wall. The clock hit 2 a.m. 40 hours left. I called Veronica, no answer. I called again, nothing. I texted, "Are you okay? I need the password urgently." The text showed delivered but not read. 3 a.m., 4 a.m. My hands shook as I poured my 5th cup of coffee. If I couldn't open this drive, it was over. I tried reaching out to Jason, to Ethan, no one knew the code. At 5 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Veronica, sorry, I turned off my phone. I thought I was being followed. The password is Rock in the River 2019, the year my father died and what you told me that day." I typed it in with trembling fingers. The screen unlocked. File by file, the truth began to pour out like the final pieces of a puzzle. But the joy only lasted a few minutes. As I combed through the files, I discovered a massive problem. The data Veronica backed up was missing a crucial piece: the email transaction logs between Ryan and the legal department during the week I was away. Without that, I could only prove Ryan had edited the contract, but I couldn't prove he had intentionally falsified it. In the legal world, that is the difference between an error and fraud. The difference between a slap on the wrist and being fired or sued. I slumped into my chair, my head spinning. 35 hours left, and I still didn't have enough evidence. Upon closer inspection, I realized a devastating truth. Without the logs between Ryan and legal, I couldn't prove criminal intent, and the only person with access to the Atlas internal email system was Barbara Lewis. I called Barbara. She picked up on the 6th ring, her voice guarded. "Claire? Why are you calling at this hour?" "I need help, Barbara," I said bluntly. "I need the email logs between Ryan and legal." A terrifyingly long silence followed. "You know I can't do that." Barbara finally spoke, her voice strained. That's a violation of employee privacy. I could be fired. I could even be sued. I know, I sighed. And I have no right to ask this of you. But Barbara, I paused, searching for the words. You told me yourself that this wasn't right. If we don't act, Ryan will keep doing this to someone else, and next time they might not be lucky enough to have any evidence at all. Claire? Barbara's voice was trembling. I'm not asking you to decide right now, I said softly. But if you could. Just a copy. Anonymous. I will never reveal the source. The call ended in silence. I didn't know if Barbara would do it. All I could do was wait and hope. 12 hours passed. Nothing. I sent my incomplete report to Meridian Freight, knowing it wasn't convincing enough. As I expected, James Kovac called back. Miss Parker, we need more than this. What you sent only proves there were edits, not fraudulent intent. We'll give you 12 more hours. Otherwise, we're forced to cancel the contract.
That night, just as I was about to give up, an email from an unknown address appeared in my inbox. Proton mail, encrypted message, no sender name, no subject line, only one attachment. Ryan Legal Correspondence Confidential.pdf. I opened the file with trembling hands. It was exactly what I needed. A thread of emails showing Ryan actively directing the legal team to edit the contract to optimize profit, followed by a chilling note. Do not let Claire know about these changes. A short message followed from the same anonymous address. Doing the right thing sometimes has a price, but silence is far more expensive. A friend. I knew it was Barbara, and I knew she had just risked everything. The next morning, a 40-page report was sent out to Meridian Freight, Phoenix Group, and 2 other potential clients. Attached was the full audit trail, edit logs, internal emails, and the original contract. In less than 6 hours, James Kovac from Meridian Freight called back, his voice heavy. Miss Parker, we owe you an apology. These allegations, they were clearly slanderous. But I wasn't done. I forwarded the entire dossier to the Atlas Dynamics Board of Directors, with a CC sent straight to the American Logistics Association. 2 days later, Pioneer Retail Group publicly canceled their $20 million contract with Atlas. Ryan Cooper was fired within 24 hours. Victor Harrington was suspended pending an investigation. The toxic machine had finally started to eat itself. 6 months later, on a bright sunny morning, Logan called me into his office. Claire, he smiled, the board just approved it. You are officially the executive vice president of Novalink Solutions. I stood there in silence, letting the emotions sink in. It wasn't about the title, it was about what it represented. Trust. They saw my value not just in the numbers I generated, but in the way I built the team and the way I treated people. And one more thing, Logan added. Pioneer Retail Group wants to sponsor a corporate fund at Novalink, specifically to support employees facing personal loss. They said you changed the way they view human value. That evening, I drove to the cemetery. Sitting by my mother's grave, I placed a bouquet of white daisies on the damp earth. You were right, Mom, I whispered, my fingers brushing the pendant. I learned how to stand firm, not to fight the river, but to exist within it. And now, I'm building a place where no one will ever have to choose between their family and their job again. A gentle breeze stirred the petals like a soft, whispered reply. Standing by the window now, I look out at the Colorado River flowing quietly under the evening light. The rocks are still there, standing bold against the rushing current. From our deepest wounds, we have built a Novalink that is solid and humane, not just for today, but for the generations to come. I know my mother would be proud. This victory doesn't erase the memory of those 3 fateful days. It simply gives me a safe place to look back at them without feeling powerless ever again. Beside the Colorado River, Claire chose to stand firm like a rock. Not for revenge, not to drown in resentment, but to resolutely build something better, something kinder. Her story reminds us that true victory doesn't lie in destroying the past, but in how we architect the future. What about you? Have you ever had to stand firm in the face of injustice? Share your story with us in the comments below. If Claire's 4-leaf clover pendant reminded you of your own inner strength, please hit subscribe and the bell icon so you don't miss our next heart-touching story. In our next video, we'll bring you the story of someone who turned a devastating loss into hope for an entire community. Thank you for believing in new beginnings with us. Keep standing firm like a rock, and never stop rising.